The Harmonic Convergence, The Untold Story, Chapter 4, Timeline Jumping to Atlantis. Maxim, NyShaRa and I stood in the jump room chamber, preparing to timeline jump to Atlantis. The jump room chamber was located in the King's Chamber, in Khufu, the Great Pyramid. Altar, the co-creator of the pyramids and also a member of our light family, stood ready to operate the zero-point energy generators. The pyramids, amongst their many other functions, are portals or jump rooms that can take us to any frequency destination that we care to adventure into. As opposed to a natural portal, this is a man-made portal, therefore it operates in the same way as a starship. Unlike a starship, however, this man-made portal was not made with AI technology. It was made with the mind, or consciousness. Maxim and I were facing each other, looking into each other's eyes, and holding hands. I wanted to stay here, feeling our love for one another for more than just a few minutes. However, I also knew that our mission awaited us. When I feel my love for Maxim, I also experience the love of Prime Creator. It is Prime Creator's love that I am feeling, and it feels euphoric and infinite. I turned my attention to NyShaRa, and feeling the love between us also, we both smiled. "Are you all ready for this timeline jump?" asked Altar. "Yes, and as we are jumping to our home in Atlantis," inquired Maxim, "I am assuming that it will be easy to deliver us to the exact place and time where our light family are waiting for us." "Well, it should be," said Altar. It is one thing to send you back 30,000 years to your home in Atlantis, because we have the correct frequencies for your home, but how do we send you back to the exact time where you want to arrive? All timelines are happening simultaneously, and well, there are infinite timelines, all with your home on them. So we need a reference point if we are to place you on the right timeline and at precisely the right time. Altar paused while he entered more data into the AI control panels. We need to calculate the frequency of your home, the people who are already in your home, and then we're adding your frequencies as you will all now be arriving there," said Altar. "Well, as soon as someone or something walks into an area, it changes the frequency. So, I am just calculating this at the moment." Maxim nodded his head in approval. "Good. Okay, we are almost ready," said Altar. Maxim squeezed my hands, and his eyes, excited with the promise of another adventure together, reassured me that our mission would make a positive impact. We both knew, even if we were defeated to the extent that we lost our lives, that our consciousness never dies, and we would return once again to bring knowledge and love to humanity. Maxim indicated to Altar to activate the timeline jump. As the frequencies harmonized to our destination frequency, before actually making the jump, we could taste the air, smell the pollen, and hear the sounds of birds in the trees. All of our senses were in tune with our destination, and it was quite a remarkable feeling. My sensory perception felt Atlantis stronger and stronger, and then we were sucked into the frequency of that timeline. In an instant, Maxim, NyShaRa and I were standing in our home, surrounded by tropical forests and rivers in Atlantis. There are others in our light family standing in our home with us who have also responded to the clarion call. And although Maxim, NyShaRa and I have just arrived, literally out of the blue, our Lyrian brothers and sisters have been expecting us. In fact, we may have only been absent for seconds or minutes, because when we timeline jump, we can arrive back in time as though we have never left. What can you tell us about the current state of affairs? Maxim asked Dulkar-Ra. Dulkar-Ra stepped forward and bowed his head in acknowledgement. Welcome. The Dark Ones have slaughtered most of the native species and have enslaved the Atlantean Lyrians. Oh. Of course, all of these civilizations were unarmed and unprepared. Fighting is not in their consciousness, so there has been little resistance. Cinderella stepped forward and hugged us, one after the other, taking her time to be present with Maxim, NyShaRa, and myself. Greetings, Cinderella, we harmonized together. Cinderella was now a young woman in this other timeline on Atlantis. I felt entranced by her mystical, almost hypnotic elegance. She had long blonde hair that was pulled back by a golden headband fashioned into a Celtic-like knot. In the center of the headband was a bright blue opal that displayed iridescent characteristics of blue, white, green, and yellow. She was wearing a gown in the typical Lemurian style, a full-length sleeveless garment with a deep V neckline gathered at the waist and in the most penetrating shade of lavender. Why did the Atlantean Lyrians allow themselves to be enslaved? Cinderella inquired. Couldn't they see what the Dark Ones were attempting to do? That question requires a rather long explanation, Cinderella, I responded. However, perhaps this is a good time to discuss the events that have brought us all to the situation that we now find ourselves within. Maxim nodded in agreement. The Great Lyrian Expansion, he began, refers to the races who were escaping from the Dark Ones approximately 1 million years ago. The Dark Ones had been scouring this quadrant of the galaxy, annihilating many planets and species, and these decimations are known as the Orion Wars. Cinderella sat down, and leaning forward, I could see that she was already transfixed by the story. During the Orion Wars, continued Maxim, the Lyrians, who were naturally seeded by the Charistus, and therefore a gentle species with no weaponry technology, were forced to escape from their home planet, Lyra. "Oh, Maxim?" inquired Cinderella, her index finger raised. "When you say naturally seeded, do you mean that a life starts from nature and the new species moves through the mineral, plant, and animal kingdoms?" "Yes," said Maxim. "On Gaia, for example, a naturally created civilization is a part of, or has a direct link to the Earth, as well as being a spark of Prime Creator." "Oh, yes, of course. And how did they escape from Lyra?" asked Cinderella. "Did they have starships?" "Yes," said Maxim. "The Lyrians could escape because they had starships. However, many civilizations were not so technologically advanced, and so they had no escape." There was another planet, Avalon," said Altar. "The Lyrians were forced to escape from there also." "Avalon?" inquired Cinderella. "Isn't that a place in Earth's future?" "Yes, it is," said Maxim, "and I am sure that we will visit there together shortly on another timeline." "After being forced to leave Lyra and Avalon," added NyShaRa, "the Lyrians sought refuge on the Pleiades and mixed seeds with the Arcturians, Andromedans, Syrians, and Umar, the cat people, as well as many other races, to create many new Lyrian-based races. There were also many reptilians on the Pleiades, and they were beautiful, loving beings." "Yes, well, the mixing of seeds was only possible," said Sarah, "because their DNA was similar." "After the Pleiades was invaded by the Dark Ones," I continued, "many Lyrians escaped, only this time to Gaia. In fact, the Lyrians were on Gaia before the Lemurian and Atlantean civilizations were here." "The Pleiades was invaded also?" asked Samira. Samira, in contrast to Cinderella, possessed more of a fiery independence. She was wearing comfortable outdoor fatigues, and her long red hair was braided and tied into a top knot. She enjoyed rock climbing, parascending, the wilderness and nature, as do many other adventurous Pleiadians. On another timeline, Samira was commanding interstellar ships, as many Pleiadian women are also pilots. "Yes," I replied. "However, they were liberated 850,000 years ago. The Pleiadian systems then evolved into what they are today, stable holographic societies with advanced high technological abilities." "Oh, and a holographic society," interjected Cinderella, "is a society where each individual is given the same opportunities and can follow whatever pathway that they desire." "That is right," said Sarah, "and the individual is in control of their own interests, not society or an external authority, as is the case on third density Earth. The individual is supported and given access to all of the information about all things and all information about the planetary culture." Well, on Gaia, said Maxim, bringing our attention back to the Great Lyrian Expansion, the Lyrians lived in harmony with the naturally seeded civilizations who were also gentle and with no weaponry technology. Gaia was first visited by the Lyrians 40,000 years before the construction of the pyramids. The Lyrians, said Altar, as you know, settled in Oceania. In Earth's future, the continent of Oceania comprises the areas known as the Southern Hemisphere, South America, South Africa, and a small portion of India. In Earth's future, Oceania is known as Lemuria. Atlantis was also inhabited by Lyrians, said Dulkar-Ra, and, as you also know, Atlantis encompasses all of the land on Gaia that is not Lemuria. Most of the Atlantean population inhabited the continent of Appalachia that spanned between the areas in Earth's future known as North America and Europe. Oh, but isn't Atlantis made up of 5 islands? Asked Cinderella curiously. Actually, Cinderella, said Maxim, that is what many believe. However, Atlantis is comprised of 5 continents. And the headquarters of Atlantis, said Dulkar-Ra, is what is called in Earth's future, what's it called, Maxim? Dulkar-Ra, it's called Iraq, said Maxim. Yes, said Dulkar-Ra, Iraq. Iraq is positioned between the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers, and this area is known as Mesopotamia. Sa-Ra looked reminiscent. Do you remember when Gaia was first seeded? She is located on the periphery of one of the galactic systems within our universe that is within reach of other galaxies and time portals or stargates. Yes, I replied. Gaia was a 5th density nursery for different species to experience birthing and to explore limitations, but also to be protected as they evolved. Many civilizations came to Gaia to gift fauna and flora from their own planets. Gaia and this solar system is very unique. Gaia was a living library and was pristine and abundant, continued NyShaRa. The races on Gaia were designed so that many different species, with similar DNA, could inhabit their biology. These different races were compatible because they were all 5th density beings. Thousands of civilizations have been seeded on Gaia, have flourished, and then they have gone. This is what Gaia was designed to do. Well, the purpose of it all, said Maxim, was the foundation of a completely new universe that operated on the principle of free will. In a free will zone, all would be allowed. I heard that the original planners for Gaia were created gods, said Cinderella, created by Prime Creator, and that this living library was an experiment. Yes, that is right, I replied. These creator gods were master geneticists who could tie molecules together, encoding them with identity frequencies, charged with their own unique coding. Were they the Charistus from Jupiter? Inquired Cinderella. Yes, they were, said NyShaRa. The Charistus were part of the creation of this solar system. They are magnificent beings, working with an aspect of consciousness called light information. They created this information center that we call Gaia, so that other galaxies could contribute their light information, and all beings would be able to share their respective and very specific knowledge. And the Pleiadians also gave their DNA for the formation of these humanoid races, didn't they? Asked Samira. Yes, they did, said Maxim, and most forms in this galaxy are humanoid. The 12 strands of DNA and 24 pairs of chromosomes in the humanoid form is virtually a constant throughout the galaxy, said Dulkara. So scientists in Earth's future, when studying DNA, are mistaken. They say that apes have 24 pairs of chromosomes, which is one more than a human, and that we share 99% of the same DNA. However, the DNA sequencing is standard throughout the galaxy, so even the fungus growing in a dark cave has over 90% of the same DNA as a human being. Yes, and after a few millennium, said Altar, new visitors arrived, whom we called the New Atlanteans. They are another race of Pleiadians from the star system known as Atlas. When the Lyrians mixed seeds in a laboratory on the Pleiades with a particular group of Sirians who were also living on the Pleiades, their offspring, the New Atlanteans, had dark skin and brown hair. They are giants. They are 8 to 10 meters tall, and some of them have elongated skulls. And everyone lived together? Asked Samira. The giants formed a colony on Gaia, said Altar, and many other races lived here in their colonies also. However, it was a holographic society. Everyone lived in harmony. Eventually, I smiled, we came here too. We lived in Lemuria 10,000 years before the Dark Ones arrived. The Lyrians are also our ancestors. However, we came from the Taygetan system in the Pleiades and are known as the Nordic Pleiadians. There are thousands of varieties of Lyrian descendants still living in the Pleiades. However, they chose not to come here. I remember that tens of thousands of interstellar civilizations visited Gaia over eons of time, said Maxim in a melancholy mood. There were many interstellar spaceports, and they were all very busy. The races who came here and the people who lived here used jump rooms to travel, or they sailed on boats. This was a beautiful time to be on Gaia. Ah, yes, said Dulkara. The trade winds were light, and one could cross the oceans with little threat of inclement weather. Gaia's civilizations, being the Lyrians who settled in Lemuria and Atlantis, the various indigenous people, and intergalactic visitors from around the galaxy all lived in harmony and celebrated Gaia's abundance with all of the exotic life forms. Samira, unable to contain herself, was feeling effervescent as a result of our conversation. "And what happened next?" she blurted out with excitement. I laughed. "Well, Samira, this cooperative existence changed when the Dark Ones arrived on Gaia. When the Dark Ones arrived on Gaia, the Orion Wars arrived here also, and this war is still playing out in Earth's 21st century." I turned my attention back to Cinderella. And now, to address your original question, why did the Lyrians living in Atlantis not see what the Dark Ones were attempting to do? It is because, first of all, the Lyrians who have now been captured by the Dark Ones do not think in the same way that we do. Do you mean because they do not have technological advancements? Asked Cinderella. I know that Taygetan Pleiadians rely heavily on AI. Well, that is not quite correct, interjected Samira. While a part of the natural evolution of any species is to develop technology, their existence, ultimately, becomes meaningless because their lives are organized by artificial intelligence. In the Pleiades, for example, they have become so technologically advanced that now there is a move back to a simpler life. Rather than using replicators to reproduce whatever they desire, the Taygetans are growing crops, manufacturing natural fiber for clothing, and stepping into a more natural way of life in general. They are, after all, a naturally seeded species, and are now returning to a more natural way of living. Ah, so you have been instrumental in this return back to a natural life? I asked Samira. Yes, Samira said proudly. It becomes boring when a replicator makes your clothes, your favorite eye makeup, the food that you like, and organizes everything that you need for you. The Pleiadians want the challenge of providing for themselves. Well, that is wonderful, Samira, I replied. Somehow, I just can't see you feeling content being pampered by a replicator. We all laughed. One of the main reasons that the Atlantean Lyrians do not think the same way as we do, began Sarah, is that they are from a low fifth density area of the Pleiades. So they were attracted to Atlantis, which is also a low fifth density civilization. Well, they were a frequency match. However, other high fifth density Lyrians chose to inhabit Lemuria because they were a frequency match for this high fifth density civilization. There is always contrast, and Atlantis was the contrast for Lemuria. And keep in mind, said Maxim, his head lowered as he peered out from beneath his eyebrows, low density is not any lesser than a high density. They are both valid and equal. They are just different experiences, and you cannot have one without the other. We had homes both in Lemuria and Atlantis, I added, and as high fifth density beings, we could teleport ourselves from one home to the other, from Lemuria to Atlantis, without changing our frequency. Lemuria and Atlantis, therefore, existed together, However, they existed on different frequency timelines. I also heard, said Samira, that the Atlantean Lyrians did not know what was happening because the Dark Ones were working behind the scenes, only appearing when they want to appear, existing outside of the lives of the majority of people. The Lyrians in Atlantis, therefore, did not even know, at first, that they were the slaves of the Dark Ones. This is so typical of the Dark Ones, said Dulkar-Ra, and this is also happening on third density Earth. On Orion, said NyShaRa, there is a tyrannical system where there are 7 levels of hierarchy from the elite down to the valueless. That is why the caste system is now operating on Earth, because it came from Orion. The Dark Ones in Atlantis dominated this hierarchical system of control, and similar to the situation in Earth's future, the Atlantean Lyrians adapted to this system and perceived it as their normalcy. Dulkar-Ra nodded in agreement. The best slaves to follow dogmatic practices are the slaves who do not believe that they are in slavery, he said. I suppose, said Cinderella, as long as a being follows a dogmatic practice and believes that practice to be true, or that there is nothing that they can do to change their situation, even if they could, then they have imprisoned themselves. That is another good description of mind control, said NyShaRa. Yes, agreed Sarah. However, as the Dark Ones gained more and more control and became more and more violent, by the time that the Atlantean Lyrians realized what was happening, it was too late. Unfortunately, interjected Altar, the Atlantean Lyrians have a lot of fear. It is this fear that has lowered their DNA and attracted their oppressors into their lives. This fear is what attracted the Dark Ones to Lyra and Avalon, to the Pleiades, and to Gaia. Well, everything that occurs in our outer world is a mirror, so that we can see our belief structures, said Cinderella. Absolutely, said NyShaRa. The high 5th density Lyrians, who settled in Lemuria, could remember their past lives and had learned through their experiences, so they had clarity. The low 5th density Lyrians in Atlantis, however, were less aware because they did not have access to many other timelines or reference points to alert them to what was occurring. The Dark Ones wanted a slave race, said Altar, so they tried to manipulate the DNA of the captured Atlantean Lyrians. They wanted to lower their frequency so that other low-frequency beings could inhabit their biology. Do you mean, said Cinderella, that they wanted to hijack the experiment on Gaia? What I mean is, by lowering the frequency of the Atlantean Lyrians, many species, who were initially incompatible with a 5th density biology, would now be able to enter the living library. That is right, interjected NyShaRa. Remember, the Dark Ones have superior intelligence. They can outsmart many low 5th density beings with mind control. And, of course, they have great knowledge about splicing DNA and genes. The Lyrian DNA, however, is very strong. Their ADMA has a direct link to Prime Creator, and no matter how much they spliced their genes or cloned them, The Atlantean Lyrians always reverted back to their Lyrian DNA. I learned, said Samira, that if you have the DNA from two positive races, you can splice them and make a new race because they both have Adma. When you mix a positive race with a negative frequency, however, they return back to their original DNA, and that is why the Dark Ones were not successful when they spliced genes with the Lyrians. I also heard that they were creating all kinds of creatures, inquired Maxim. Indeed, said Dulkara. They successfully spliced genes together to experiment with races and animals. There have been all kinds of abominations, half man and half antelope, half man and half ape, and so on and so forth, and none of them have survived because of a lack of Adma or connection to Prime Creator. Cinderella let out a moan. Oh. And I suppose the Dark Ones had to splice genes to create another race because they are not able to interbreed with different species, said Samira. They are simply not compatible, so they cannot reproduce themselves. The off-planet Dark Ones, added Sarah, are fourth density and do not have a physical body as a third density human would understand physicality. In fourth density, their body is dense. However, to experience this being in third density, the human would not be able to see them. They would only feel their energy. In linear Earth time, they can live up to, 100,000 years. And when they do die, they do not reincarnate. They inhabit another body, and they achieve this through satanic rituals. What do you mean they cannot reproduce themselves? Asked Cinderella, a confused expression on her face. The Dark Ones gave their Adma, or connection to Prime Creator, away, said Maxim, and therefore cannot reproduce themselves. When they disconnected their Adma from Prime Creator, they became mortal. Other beings with a soul are immortal. Yes, I agreed. The Dark Ones are seeking immortality. However, with their consciousness, have denied any experiences that come through love and integration with Prime Creator. They instead find nourishment in the polarized version of love, and that is fear. In truth, there is no opposite to love. There is only resistance, and it is through this resistance that we create contrast. When we have experienced the contrast to love, we are then able to choose love. I heard that the Dark Ones were created by Prime Creator, exclaimed Cinderella. Let's put it this way, began Dulkara. All so-called negative or dark races are manifested by positive races. Oh, yes, exclaimed Samira. I studied this with my mentors. So, in actual fact, those with souls control those without a soul. Souls with an Adma control the Dark Ones with their mind and consciousness. And this brings us back to how the Lyrians created the Dark Ones with their fear, said Altar. If they did not have any fear, they would not have created the Dark Ones. And let us not forget, said Maxim, that there is always dark and light in this universe. There cannot be dark without light, or light without dark. If there are loving beings, then there exists dark beings also. This is duality and the nature of the universe. Remember, we are both dark and light are both an aspect or a portal that Prime Creator is experiencing itself through. Dark and light are both aspects of Prime Creator. It does not serve us to judge the dark, I agreed. It is only our meaning that we put onto dark and light that defines it for us in a judgmental way. Isn't it the case, however, said Samira, that duality only plays out in the lower densities? Yes, I said. And actually, the Dark Ones have successfully created their own slave race, continued NyShaRa, the Khufu reptilians. Oh, but in a laboratory, right? Said Samira. Yes, that is right, said NyShaRa. My mind went into the future once again. The Khufu are the only slave race that was successfully genetically created. Eventually, they rebelled, working against the Dark Ones, and became strong and powerful with technology in their own right. They remained on Gaia up until 21st century Earth, implementing the Dark One's agenda. And, of course, they are unable to incarnate also. They are still behind all of the governments, all of the secret societies, and the Cabal in 21st century Earth. Their headquarters are underground, on Mars, and they use jump rooms to travel around the solar system. In the end, said Altar, the only way for the Dark Ones to create a slave race was to use mind control. The Dark Ones have a long but finite life. They are very clever, and they have a lot of patience to carry out their plan. These are highly intelligent beings with technologies unimaginable by 21st century humanity. As they began to introduce mind control, or programming, the DNA of the Atlantean Lyrians began to change, said Maxim. It is easier to mind control someone who is not fully awake. Little by little, over a period of time, the mind control that they were subjected to lowered their frequency and changed their DNA. As their DNA changed, all of the processes in their body changed also. That is right, I agreed. The way that advanced races modify the genes of another species is to make the species itself modify its own genes. The genes themselves are designed so that the consciousness of the body turns them on or turns them off. Oh yes, said Samira. It is the consciousness that reads some genes and not others, rewrites them or creates entirely new genes. It is the individual who manipulates them with their own consciousness and perception of reality. So, genes are a reflection of where the consciousness places its attention, said Cinderella. Yes, said Dulkar-Ra. You can see how this is achieved through mind control. Mind control creates a belief, and the belief changes the DNA. And our thoughts model and assemble our DNA on a moment-by-moment basis, said Cinderella. That is right, I said. You have control of your own biology. I turned my eyes towards Altar. Where are they keeping the Atlantean Lyrians? I inquired. Samira. Altar's disposition had become solemn. The Atlantean Lyrians are being held prisoner. The children have been separated from their parents and are being mind-controlled. They are using the adults as slaves and food. This is what happened on Phaeton, said Dulkar-Ra, and hung his head in sorrow. I am remembering, I said gravely, that I was on Phaeton, Dulkar-Ra. Yes, you were. Dulkar-Ra's eyes filled with tears. These memories are hard, I said, very hard, and yet we have endured them. I remember that the Dark Ones, said Sarah, abducted humans from Earth and transported them to Phaeton. On Phaeton, they fed on the secretion of human glands, used humans as elixirs, or ate their meat, and were especially fond of the women and children. And they used human skin for manufacturing bags and clothing for other races, said NyShaRa. A human skin that was tattooed was especially prized. There was sexual exploitation also, said Dulkar-Ra. They used a human organic portal to exploit another person as a sex slave. They were most interested in rituals with boys and girls less than 13 years of age, and especially if these young humans were virgins. What do you mean? They used a human portal? Shrieked Cinderella. When a consciousness is low, said Sarah, they can come through the human because they are a frequency match and use their body to experience sexual exploitation. How could they do that? Spat Samira. These are people. Humans, I said, are like third density cattle to them, Samira. It is also worth noting that on the timeline where we were abducted and taken to Phaeton, we were low fifth density and we had a lot of fear. This war is not new, said NyShaRa. It has been waging for tens of thousands of years, on and off this planet, and in and outside of our solar system. The Dark Ones have been either residing on this planet or visiting it from off-planet locations for millions of years and consider it to be theirs. A long silence filled the room. I wondered if our conversation had been too strong for Cinderella and Samira. However, I also knew that it was necessary for them to understand the depth of the situation that we were confronting. And what of our brothers and sisters from Atlas, the new Atlanteans? I inquired. They have returned to Atlas, Samira, continued Dulkar-Ra. The Dark Ones have completely taken Atlantis as their own. And the high fifth density Lyrians, who have escaped from the annihilation? Asked Maxim. Do you know of their whereabouts? "We are scattered around Lemuria and Atlantis," responded Sarah, "and are resisting the attacks by keeping our consciousness high. We will not allow the Dark Ones to conquer our lands, and we will not be subjected to mind control." "All right," said Altar. "So where from here?" Maxim, who had been feeling through the conversation, was now ready to present us with a plan. And so, my journey continues